Hello and welcome to the newest episode of How to Paint. Today we're looking at Jill Valentine and a zombie from Resident Evil, the board game. I'm a big fan of this franchise, so these were really fun to paint, and without further ado, let's get into it. So these are from the Kickstarter edition, but the sculpts are the same if you had the retail edition, and these are from the Resident Evil 1 board game. So I'm going to start things off with my usual prime in just a flat black here, and I'm priming all over with both these miniatures. And then I'm taking a white and I'm applying this from above at roughly a 45-degree angle. So starting with Jill, I'm using Cloudburst blue and some Speedpaint medium, and I'm applying the Cloudburst blue to the trousers here and using that Speedpaint medium just to thin it down just a hair, and then adding the Speedpaint on top of some of the areas that I want some highlights, like the knees and the upper thighs. I'm taking care not to get any of the straps, but at this stage it's okay if you have some overspill. For Jill's shirt, I'm using rust grey, and I'm just applying this as a base coat. Again, not too worried about not being so neat right at this stage. The sculpt is quite closed off because of her position with her arms, so I'm just taking care just to make sure that I just at least get some paint on the inside there. I'm using Scale Colors Pink Flesh, and I'm going to be applying this to the arms and the face. I'm taking some care on the face. I don't want to get it onto the hair, so just being pretty precise with some of these brush strokes. I'm also trying to avoid the eyes as well. Next, I'm using Scale Colors Navy Blue, and I'm applying this to the shoulders and the beret. This can be quite a thin paint, so you'll have to possibly do 2 coats on this one. And then I'm also using the navy blue just to dot some of the eyes, and then I'll use a light grey or the flesh tone just to tidy it up. And then back to the speed paint, we're using Grim Black, and I'm applying this to the boots and the gloves and the gun. I always thin down the speed paints with just a bit of the medium. I find it helps the paint to just flow nicely off the brush as well. And here's some hardened leather. I'll be using this for the hair. Just carefully going around the sculpt, trying not to get it on the flesh or the blue. And then using some of that Grim Black to get some of these straps and holsters and things. And I'm going to be using some Coelia Greenshade, and this is kind of a green, kind of a blue shade. I'll be using this on the shirt and the blue beret and shoulders. It's going to really darken the shirt for now, but we'll highlight that back up again. Again, just using some precision just to avoid some of the flesh areas. I've gone back to the rust grey, and I'm using this to do the initial highlights over the shirt. So I'm trying to avoid some of those deeper areas in the sculpt to keep that shade in place, but I'm really just looking to highlight back into that original colour. And then rather than mixing in white to highlight, I'm going to actually be using deck tan. This is a kind of nice ivory warm white, and I kind of want to keep these colours nice and warm. So this is the rust grey mixed in with just a little bit of that deck tan, and I'm using this as my second highlight. White will actually desaturate the original colour, whereas adding a warm or cool colour will keep the saturation but increase the brightness. And here I've gone one step higher, and I'm just adding a smaller and smaller patch of these highlights. I don't want it to appear shiny, so I'm going to stop at this highlight here, but this is just a nice way to get some of that depth and definition. And then I'm using that same strategy on the navy blue. So I'm painting on some navy blue, and then I'm adding some deck tan just to warm up that blue a little bit and use that as a highlight. And then I'm adding just a little bit more deck tan just to build up that highlight to a brighter blue. And every time I apply another step in the color, I'm just doing it on a smaller and smaller area. And I'm going to be doing the same sort of thing to the flesh here. So this is the basic flesh, and I'm just applying this just over the original pink flesh on the upper half of these arms. And then I'm doing the same to the face. I'm covering over most of that pink flesh, but leaving some in the corners behind the ears and close to the hair. I'm going to mix in just a little bit of fuchsia, and I'm just using this to warm up those cheeks a little bit. Sometimes if you keep highlighting, they can look a little dead, and we don't want that for the human characters. So this way they can look like they've still got a little bit of life in them. And then I'm just applying some deck tan highlights onto the edges of the nose and top of the eyebrows. And just some very quick flesh tones on the fingers that are poking out through the gloves. I've mixed in some of that deck tan into the original Cloudburst blue speed paint, and I'm using this as just a quick highlight on the trousers. I'm using some Yriel yellow, and I'm thinning this right the way down to kind of a milky consistency. And there is some sculpt there on this badge, it's not the most well defined. So I'm just letting the paint seep in, and then I'm going through with a black and tidying it up so I can get those 3 stars. I'm doing the same to the badge on the beret as well, but again that's even smaller, so I'm just kind of gesturing towards the idea. I'm doing just a strip of white for some of the more detailed areas of the badge, and then I'm just gently covering over some of that with the black, leaving some of the white showing through to give the impression of text. Here's a neutral grey, and I'm just adding some very quick highlights to the straps, the badge, and all of the leather like the boots and the gloves and things. I don't want to go too overboard, so just a very simple line on the gun and the gloves here. I'm mixing in some white, so I'm making a grey first, and the same principle as the highlighting before. So I just add a little bit of grey and then I build up to a white. I'm really only looking to get a shine on the gloves and the boots, so I'm leaving the straps up to a medium grey, and then the leather is going to be much brighter. Okay, for the zombie, we're starting off with Sand Golem, and we're going to be applying that to all of the skin. And I'm just painting this as a very heavy application. I'm taking care around the shirt. I don't want to get it too messy, but if you do make a mistake, just go in with a white just to tidy up. Here is dark wood, and I'm applying this to the trousers. Again, very heavy application, and then I'll mix in just a little bit of speed paint, and I'll apply that to the highlighted areas like this bent leg here. For the jacket, I'm going to be using Ardennes green, and just taking care just to apply this quickly to the jacket as a base coat. This paint can be quite thin, so it will act a little bit like a contrast paint. I'm only doing the one coat here because I want some of those highlights to show through. I'm keeping with the deck tan theme. I feel like it warms up the colours really nicely. So this is some Sand Golem mixed with some deck tan. And the nice thing about these speed paints is that it keeps the consistency of paint once you mix paint into it, but the colour of the speed paint. So this is a nice way to build up those highlights, but without sacrificing that original colour that you applied. And this is just pure deck tan now, just to be the most brightest point. I'm just making sure I get the tips of the fingers and some of these smaller areas on the face. For the jacket, I'm going to be using Athonian Camoshade, and just applying this very heavily just to give that jacket some shading. There's a lot of zombies in this box, so I'm really hoping to get a decent recipe down so that I can fly through some of these. And for the shirt, I'm going to be using Seraphim Sepia, just straight onto that primer. I don't want it to be too clean, so this is a good way of getting some of that grime on there. While these speed paints are still wet, I'm going to be mixing in just a little bit of that deck tan again, and just applying this to the front of the leg for some additional highlights. And this is just pure deck tan on the shirt. The nice thing is that shade was still just a little bit wet, so this actually made a really nice wet blend. Okay, for the blood effects, I'm going to be using Mephiston Red, and I mixed some black in with this because I didn't want it to be bright red, and I'm just applying this to some of the kind of gnarled, mottled pieces of the sculpt on the fingers and things like that. I'm just letting the brush kind of dance around in some key areas. I'm not too worried about brush strokes and things. You can also get the same effect with the sponge brush. And then lastly, I'm just getting the interior of the mouth and just on the chin. I'm not quite sold on what I'm going to be doing with the bases yet, but just for finishing these miniatures for now, I'm applying a kind of dark grey initially to both of these bases. And painting the rims black. And then to add some interest, I'm using some brown battleground. And this is just some PVA glue, some Elmer's glue, and a couple of sprinkles of that on there just to give it some interest. And then I'm just adding some final contrast paint on top. This is dark wood. Again, not 100% sold on this base look that I'm going for, but this will do for now, and then as I paint more I'll finish these out. And there you have it, 2 very quick and easy paint jobs for Resident Evil the board game. We play this game quite a lot, so it's great to finally get some painted characters on the board. There's a ton of miniatures in all of the Kickstarter boxes and stuff, so if you want to see more of this, please let me know. Thank you again so much for watching this content, making it this far. I really do appreciate all your love and support, and there's some good stuff coming in the future. I will see you in the next one.